Good afternoon. Let's take a closer look at my copyright lesson and how it follows the Assure model. The lesson plan info, first it's created by me, Julie Haverland Allen. It's for grades 6th through 8th, which would be middle school. The topic is copyright rules, and the length that the lesson could take is for a 50-minute class. A stands for Analyze Learners. So analyzing my hypothetical class, number of students would be 12, 7 males, 5 females, possibly ranging in ages 11 to 13. The mental, social, and physical notes are such as 2 students could be identified as special ed with accommodations. Visual, kinesthetic, and verbal learners could be in this class, and 2 ESL students. My children would be below grade level in reading skills and comprehension because that's typically what you're going to have now. Learning styles, estimated percentage of students, 35% are visual learners, 25% could be auditory learners, and 40% would be kinesthetic learners. S stands for State Standards and Objectives. Students should demonstrate an understanding of the rights and obligations of using and sharing intellectual property. So hopefully by the end of the lesson, students will demonstrate their understanding through a hands-on copyright case study relay race. S stands for Select Methods, Media, and Materials. I will use 2 different teaching methods during this lesson and activity. First, I'll present my multimedia presentation, and then we will have a hands-on case study, activity, or game with small groups. So that hands-on reaches those kinesthetic learners for sure, and then the small groups helps with those that have accommodations or might struggle with reading. U stands for Utilize Resources. I need to arrange tables into groups spaced equally apart from the teacher station since we're doing a relay game. I would have a home base students can easily access for the relay activity. First, I would present a slide with jobs and instructions with expectations for the relay activity. R stands for Require Learner Participation. I would require during my engaging presentation and lesson, given that the students are actively listening and possibly participating with feedback. In the relay race, each student will have a job to do during the hands-on activities, such as a runner who goes back and forth to get the next question, a writer, a reader, maybe even a timekeeper, just depending on how many students are in each group. Typically, you'd have 3 to 4 students per group. Groups will demonstrate their knowledge and understanding by collaborating together to identify if the case meets copyright laws. And what type of copyright? Is it fair use? Would this resource come from the Creative Commons? Things like that. E stands for Evaluate. I would monitor students' level of engagement throughout the lesson. If needed, I could ask questions to help keep their attention and encourage more participation. Monitor and adjust activity instructions and expectations as needed. Maybe if I noticed during the lesson they weren't participating or listening as well, I might need to go more into depth in my expectations during the activity. And then at the end, I need to reflect on the highs and the lows of the lesson and activity for future use. Let's say I was going to teach this again the next year. It's important to reflect to see how you can improve it for next time. And I did include my rubric in this little presentation, even though I don't think we were told to. So I made this little rubric. It's Copyright Case Study Rubric. And it has 3 different categories: at standard, approaching standard, and below standard. So I could grade my students on lesson engagement. Student was engaged throughout the lesson. They added comments and asked questions. Or student was engaged through most of the lesson, or the student was not engaged. Case study relay. The student demonstrated copyright knowledge during the activity through identifying mostly correct responses, or the student was somewhat engaged, or student somewhat demonstrated knowledge by correctly identifying some correct answers, or the student was not able to demonstrate and did not get correct answers. And then finally, behavior and participation. The student was well behaved, participated during the lesson, and led group discussion during the activity. Or the student was somewhat well behaved and somewhat participated during the lesson, and then somewhat participated in group discussion during the activity. Or for below standard, the student was not well behaved, did not participate during the lesson, and did not take part in the group discussion during the activity. I think this is a simple way to grade if they grasped the concept of copyright, and their behavior will kind of show that as well. If they're not listening and be participating, then obviously they're not going to grasp that skill.